Today, we are diving deep into a clinical trial that gave us not one, but two incredible stories in the fight against a very tough form of breast cancer. It's a story about a powerful new treatment, for sure, but it's also about a hidden message in the blood that could completely change how we track this disease. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the why, the big challenge of this particular cancer. Then, we'll walk through the new treatment approach they tested. After that, we'll look at the long-term results. And then, this is the really cool part, the biomarker breakthrough they stumbled upon. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with what this means for the future.
Okay, first things first. Let's really set the stage here. Why was this trial such a big deal? Well, it all comes down to the enemy it was designed to fight.
We're talking about triple-negative breast cancer, or TNBC. Now, why triple-negative? It's because the cancer cells don't have the three most common docking stations: receptors for estrogen, progesterone, and a protein called HER2. In other types of breast cancer, we have amazing drugs that can target those receptors. But with TNBC, those doors are closed. That leaves fewer options, making it notoriously aggressive and tougher to treat.
So, how do you take on a challenge like that? Well, researchers came up with a new strategy for the IMpassion031 trial. The big idea was to see if they could get the patient's own immune system to join the fight.
And this really was the million-dollar question. If you take standard chemotherapy, but you add an immunotherapy drug, in this case one called atezolizumab, and you give it before surgery, can you get a better result? The hope was to supercharge the treatment, shrink the tumor way more effectively, and ultimately help patients live longer, healthier lives.
The patient's journey through the trial had three main parts. First up, the neoadjuvant phase. That's just the fancy term for treatment before surgery. Everyone got chemo, but half of them also got the immunotherapy drug, while the other half got a placebo. Then came the surgery to remove the tumor. And finally, in the adjuvant phase, the group that got the immunotherapy kept getting it to try and stop the cancer from ever coming back. To make sure the results were legit, they split 333 patients into two almost perfectly matched groups. You had 165 patients getting the real deal, immunotherapy plus chemo, and you had 168 patients getting a placebo plus chemo.
This kind of head-to-head comparison is really the gold standard for figuring out if a new drug actually works.
So the trial went on. The data was collected, and after more than 3 years of follow-up, it was the moment of truth. Did adding this immunotherapy drug actually make a difference in the long run? Let's start with what's called event-free survival. Basically, how long a patient lives without the cancer getting worse or coming back. And right away, you can see a positive signal. The immunotherapy group did better. That hazard ratio of 0.76 means they had a 24% lower risk of something bad happening compared to the group that just got chemo. That's a trend you love to see.
And check this out. That exact same pattern shows up for disease-free survival, which looks specifically at whether the cancer comes back after surgery. Once again, a clear trend favoring the immunotherapy group with the exact same hazard ratio. When you see consistency like this across different measures, it gets you really excited that you're looking at a real effect.
And then, the big one, overall survival. This is the ultimate bottom line, and here the signal was even stronger. The hazard ratio dropped all the way to 0.56. That points to a really meaningful survival benefit for the patients who got the immunotherapy.
So here's the key takeaway right from the researchers themselves. The main goal of the study was to see if the drug could achieve a pathologic complete response, or PCR, which just means the treatment completely obliterated the tumor by the time of surgery. And it did. Now, the study wasn't technically big enough to prove these long-term survival benefits with statistical certainty, but the fact that every single measure, EFS, DFS, and OS, all pointed in the same positive direction, that's powerful, powerful supporting evidence.
But believe it or not, that was just the first story. The second, and maybe even more exciting story, came from digging through the data and looking for clues hidden in the patient's blood. And this, my friends, is where things get wild.
The scientists were hunting for something called circulating tumor DNA, or ctDNA. Here's a simple way to think about it. Cancer is messy. As tumors grow and cells die, they shed little bits of their DNA into the bloodstream.
So ctDNA is like the cancer's molecular fingerprint. It's the trace evidence it leaves behind telling you it's there.
So they checked the blood samples at the start of the study, and what they found was just, wow. A full 94% of the patients had these molecular fingerprints of cancer floating around in their blood. It was basically everywhere.
Okay, but what happened after the pre-surgery treatment? This is amazing. By the time the patients went in for their operation, the chemo and immunotherapy had worked so well that in 87% of those patients, the ctDNA was completely gone. Vanished. The molecular crime scene had been wiped clean.
Right, but that leads to the most important question of all. What about the people who didn't have a perfect response? You know, the high-risk patients whose tumors weren't totally gone by surgery. Could this blood test tell us something more about their future?
And the answer was a resounding yes. It was profound. For those high-risk patients, the ones everyone worries about most, their ctDNA status was an incredibly powerful crystal ball. If their blood was clear of ctDNA, even if they had some tumor left, their survival outlook was much, much better. But if that molecular fingerprint was still there in the blood, they had the absolute worst prognosis. This blood test was telling them something that just looking at the tumor under a microscope couldn't.
So let's zoom out and put it all together. We have these two huge stories, a promising new treatment and a revolutionary new biomarker. What does this all mean for the future of how we fight cancer?
It really boils down to three big things. Takeaway number one, adding immunotherapy to pre-surgery chemo looks like a great strategy for these patients. 2, getting that perfect response before surgery, that PCR, is a fantastic sign for long-term survival. But 3, and this is the real game changer, this ctDNA blood test gives us a whole other layer of information. It can pinpoint which patients, even among the high-risk group, are in the most danger. And that leaves us with this incredible, provocative question for the future. Are we heading toward a world where a simple blood test can do more than just find cancer? A world where it can guide our every move, telling us in real time who needs us to hit the cancer harder, and, just as importantly, who is doing so well that maybe, just maybe, they can be spared more toxic treatments. It's a radical idea, and the IMpassion031 trial has just given us a brilliant glimpse of what that future might look like.